My husband's phone rang at 3 a.m. When I answered it, a woman said, "Put my husband on the phone." I froze, because I only knew one woman who called James at that hour, and when she said her next sentence, everything I believed about my marriage and my family shattered. Before I tell you exactly what she revealed, please like this video, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. I used to believe marriages fell apart slowly, in tiny cracks you didn't notice until the whole thing collapsed. But mine didn't break slowly. Mine snapped in an instant, in a single sentence whispered across a phone line at 3 in the morning. The night it happened, I was half asleep, tangled in blankets, still warm from dreaming about a life I thought was solid. James lay beside me, breathing calmly, the peaceful, steady rhythm of a man with nothing on his conscience. Or so I believed. When his phone buzzed on the nightstand, it startled me upright. James didn't move. He always slept like a stone. I reached for the phone automatically, thinking maybe it was a work emergency, maybe a client in a different time zone. But when I answered, the voice that came through wasn't a client. It was a woman. And not just any woman, a woman whose voice I had known my whole life. "Put my husband on the phone," she said, her tone sharp, trembling, desperate. For a split second, my brain refused to process what I heard. Husband? What husband? And why call James? Why call my phone? Why at 3 in the morning? I whispered. Who is this? Even though I already knew. Or maybe I didn't know. I just felt the edges of something terrible brushing against me. "Rebecca?" she breathed. "Oh God, it's you." She sounded shocked, but not the kind of shocked that comes from dialing the wrong number. Shocked like someone whose lie just cracked open. I sat there in the dark, my heart pounding so loudly it shook the silence. Then she said the sentence that ripped the floor out from under me. "James is with me. He was supposed to be with me tonight." And in that moment, something inside me, the trusting, naive part that believed in family and loyalty and the sacredness of sisterhood, died so quietly I almost didn't hear it go. But before I tell you exactly how everything unraveled, you need to understand what my life looked like before that phone call. You need to understand why this betrayal wasn't just a wound, it was a demolition. For 7 years, I loved my husband the way little girls love fairy tales. I met him in 2018 at a networking event for marketing professionals. I was presenting a case study for a potential client, and afterwards he approached me with that charming half-smile of his, complimenting my pitch, asking if I wanted to grab coffee, and debrief the psychology of persuasion. That was James. Charismatic, ambitious, always saying the right thing. We clicked instantly, like puzzle pieces. Within a year, we were engaged. The wedding was beautiful gold accents, soft lighting, and my sister Emma standing beside me as maid of honor, smiling like she was genuinely happy for me. I believed every tear she shed in her speech. I believed her when she said, "Rebecca, you're my role model. You always have been." I believed her when she hugged me and whispered, "James is perfect for you." Looking back, I don't know which lie hurts more, James's or Emma's. After the wedding, our families blended effortlessly. Sunday dinners, game nights, holidays spent cooking and laughing. Emma and her husband Marcus lived 20 minutes away. We were like a small, tight-knit unit, two couples building futures side by side. Marcus adored Emma. He was gentle, patient, a high school teacher who brought leftover cookies from his students to family barbecues. Sometimes I would look at the four of us and think, we're lucky. We really are. I had no idea how wrong I was. The first crack appeared 6 months before the phone call. Tiny things, things you could dismiss if you wanted to. Emma stopping by unannounced more often, James suddenly choosing to work from home more days a week, the two of them texting more frequently. I remember walking into the living room one afternoon and finding them sitting apart, but both glancing down at their phones with the same startled expression when I entered. But the biggest warning came 2 months before that night, when I was doing laundry and found something tangled in the sleeve of James's shirt. A silver earring. Emma's. I froze, staring at it, my stomach dropping like someone had cut a rope inside me. I confronted James, and he barely looked up from his laptop as he said, "Oh, she probably dropped it when she helped reorganize the closet last week." It was a good answer. Too good, too ready, too calm. But I pushed the suspicion aside because what was the alternative? To believe my husband and my sister were betraying me? That felt impossible. That felt like something that happened to other people, in other stories, not in my carefully built, carefully protected life. But intuition doesn't die just because you ignore it. Mine kept whispering, tugging, scratching at me in the dark, waking me at 3 a.m. with a pounding heart and a sense of dread I couldn't explain. And then, one night, James's phone rang, and I answered it, and everything I refused to see finally came into focus. When I heard her say, "Put my husband on the phone," my brain locked up. For a moment I just sat there in the dark, the blue glow from James's screen lighting my hand, his name at the top of the call, because it was his phone, his number, his life that this woman had just sliced into like it was hers. I think you have the wrong number," I whispered, staring at James's sleeping face. He didn't flinch, didn't stir, just lay there like a man without a single secret. On the other end, the woman sucked in a breath. There was a pause, the kind that hums with 1,000 unsaid things. Then she said my name. "Rebecca?" My throat went dry. "Yes," I whispered. "Who is this?" Another pause. A soft, broken laugh. "Wow," she muttered, like the universe had just played the cruelest joke on all of us. "Of course you'd answer." Her voice was familiar in a way that made my stomach twist, like a song you've heard all your life but can't place in the first 3 notes. Then she said something that turned my blood to ice. "Is James there?" My eyes flicked to him. "He's asleep," I said slowly. "Who are you? Wake him up," she snapped suddenly, the sweetness cracking into desperation. "Put my husband on the phone." I froze. "Your husband?" I repeated. "James is my husband." Silence again. Then a sound choked, hysterical laughter blurring into a sob. "Yeah," she said bitterly. "That's the problem, isn't it?" I sat there, heart pounding so hard my chest hurt. "Who are you?" I demanded, a little louder now. The voice softened, dropped half an octave, and suddenly it clicked. The rhythm, the way she said my name, the tiny lilt on the last syllable, the one I'd heard 1,000 times growing up when she was teasing me, comforting me, asking to borrow my clothes. "It's me," she whispered. "It's Emma." The world didn't explode. It just shifted, tilted a few degrees off axis, and never righted itself again. For a second, I actually thought I was dreaming. I looked at the clock, 3:04 a.m. The room felt unreal, like a stage set. My voice broke. "Emma? Why are you calling from James's phone? Where is Marcus? Why are you asking for your husband?" I practically spat the last word. There was ragged breathing on the other end, like she'd been crying or drinking or both. "Because he was with me," she said finally, her words slow and sticky. "He said he was staying late at the office, but he came to my place instead. We fought. He left his phone. He turned it off so you wouldn't see. I turned it on and I just..." She stopped, inhaled sharply. "I wanted to know if he went home to you, or if he just walked out on both of us." I stared into the darkness, nausea rising, trying to separate each awful word from the next. "What do you mean with you?" I asked, even though my body already knew, my heart already knew, my bones already knew. "Emma, what do you mean?" Her voice dropped to a whisper so small I almost missed it. "We've been together," she said, "me and James, for months. I thought he told you. I thought tonight. I thought..." She couldn't finish. I didn't speak. I couldn't. My tongue felt like concrete. Emma kept talking, words spilling out like she was trying to vomit the guilt out of herself. "He said your marriage was over," she whispered. "He said you were just roommates at this point. That he stayed for appearances, for business, for family. He said after the Portland trip he'd tell you, that he'd leave, that we'd finally stop sneaking around." I closed my eyes. The Portland trip, the one he'd mentioned for weeks, the one coming up in a few days. The huge client presentation in Portland that he'd framed like a career-defining moment. Suddenly that trip didn't sound like business. It sounded like an endpoint, a deadline, a finish line to a race I didn't even know we were running. "You're lying," I whispered, even though Emma's tears crackling in my ear didn't sound like lies. They sounded like someone drowning. "Please tell me you're lying." "I wish I was," she said hoarsely. "God, Becca, I never meant for this to happen. It just did. We connected. He listened. Marcus and I were having problems. You know that. And James was there. And don't you dare use it just happened with me," I hissed, my hand trembling around the phone. "Affairs don't just happen, Emma. You don't just accidentally fall on top of my husband for months." She went quiet, then said it again. That sentence that would replay in my head for weeks like a curse. "Put my husband on the phone," she whispered, broken. "Please." I just need to hear his voice. I need to know if he went back to you or if he's still lying to both of us. I looked at James, still asleep, still breathing evenly. The urge to smash the phone into his face was so strong, my fingers curled. Instead, I lowered the phone. For a moment I considered waking him up, shoving the phone in his hand, forcing him to confess with Emma on speaker. But something colder slid into place inside me, a different instinct, not to confront, not yet. To listen, to gather, to observe. Slowly, I lifted the phone back to my ear. "He's here," I said calmly. "Asleep in our bed, snoring." Emma let out a sound somewhere between a sob and a laugh. "Of course he is," she murmured. "Of course." "How long?" I asked, my voice like ice. "How long has this been going on?" There was a tiny click in my mind as I asked it. I already knew the answer. It was there, waiting for me in the shadows of the last few months, in the extra work from home days, in the texts, in the way Emma knew his schedule. 8 months, she whispered. "Since March. March. Right after my birthday. Right after the party where James had kissed me in the kitchen and told me he was the luckiest man in the world, while Emma washed dishes and hummed along to my playlist. 8 months of secret looks, secret meetings, secret lies, right in front of me. "I'm going to hang up now," I said. And my voice scared me because it was so calm, so empty. "Rebecca, please. Don't call this number again," I cut in. "Don't text me. Don't show up at my house. Don't send flowers. Don't send letters. You're my sister, but right now you're also the woman sleeping with my husband. I don't know which one you are more, but either way, you're not welcome in my life." She started crying harder. "I'm so sorry," she choked. "I love you. I love you, Becca. Then you should have loved me enough not to do this," I said, and ended the call. I sat there in the dark, phone still in my hand, the silence around me suddenly very loud. James shifted beside me, rolled over, draped an arm across my waist like he always did. The same arm he'd probably wrapped around my sister hours earlier. My body went rigid. I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing, my heart weirdly calm now that the worst had been dragged into the light. 8 months. The number kept echoing. 8 months of betrayal from the two people who were supposed to love me most. I didn't shake him awake. I didn't scream or throw the phone or demand answers. Instead, a different kind of clarity settled over me, sharp, focused, lethal. I realized something in that moment. Catching someone in a lie isn't the end. It's the beginning. Emma had given me a gift without realizing it. A timeline. A promise James had made about Portland. A confession that my instincts had been right all along. And now, for the first time in months, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I lay there next to my cheating husband, feeling his breath on the back of my neck, and I made a decision. Portland would still happen. He would still think everything was going according to his plan. He would think he was moving pieces on a board only he could see. What he didn't know was that the game had just changed. And I wasn't playing to save the marriage anymore. I was playing to burn the lies to the ground and make sure everyone who built them stood in the ashes. The morning after that phone call, everything in the house looked the same, but nothing felt the same. The sunlight coming through the kitchen window hit the counter the way it always did. The hum of the refrigerator was steady and familiar, but the air felt wrong, thick, contaminated. James stood barefoot by the espresso machine, sleep-ruffled hair, rubbing his eyes like a man who had done nothing more scandalous than snooze past his alarm. "You're up early," he said with that easy smile, the one that always softened me. For the first time, I saw it for what it was, a mask. A mask he'd been wearing for months while kissing me goodnight after being with Emma. My stomach tightened, but I forced a neutral tone. Couldn't sleep. He didn't notice anything. Didn't notice the way I watched him, with a different kind of awareness. The way every gesture he made now carried a second meaning. He asked if I wanted coffee, and I nodded, studying him as he moved around the kitchen like a man whose life wasn't about to implode. As he handed me the mug, his phone buzzed on the counter. I stared at it, pulse spiking. Emma? But no, just a work notification. He didn't even glance at the screen. Why would he? He assumed she wouldn't dare text when I was awake. I kept my voice even. "Did you talk to Emma yesterday?" He frowned slightly. "No, why?" "Just wondering," I said. "She seemed off when I saw her last." He shrugged. "She probably just has a lot going on." The lie rolled off his tongue like nothing. Smooth, practiced, automatic. And maybe that moment hurt more than the phone call itself, not the cheating, but how effortlessly he could deceive me over something so basic. I watched him dress for work, fixing his collar, adjusting his belt, the quiet confidence of someone who believed he was in full control of the narrative. "I'll probably work from home this afternoon," he said casually. Big deadline. The same excuse he'd used 100 times. But now, every syllable sounded like a confession. I looked at him, really looked, and saw signs I'd ignored. The cologne I hadn't bought, the new shirts I hadn't seen before, the faint scratch near his jaw I assumed was from trimming his beard. Now I imagined Emma's nails leaving it. When he kissed my forehead goodbye, my skin crawled. The door closed behind him, and I exhaled sharply, gripping the counter until my fingers numbed. I felt like I was living in two realities. The one James thought I was still in, and the one Emma had dragged me into at 3 a.m. I wasn't ready to confront him. Confrontation gives a guilty person room to twist the truth. No, I needed more. I needed clarity, evidence, understanding, and most importantly, a plan. The next week became a study in controlled observation. Every morning, I watched his routine, the shower length, the clothes he chose, the energy in his movements. Every afternoon, I noted when he worked from home and when he didn't. Every evening, I traced the tiny inconsistencies in his stories. I had become a scientist, dissecting my own marriage. The signs multiplied faster than I could process. James suddenly guarded his phone, taking it into the bathroom, even for 30-second showers. He turned it face down at dinner. He flinched whenever I walked by too quietly. And Emma, God, Emma became worse. She started showing up at random times, pretending she just happened to be in the neighborhood. She brought muffins. She brought leftover soup. She brought books she thought I'd like. She hugged me longer than usual, like she was trying to convince herself she wasn't a monster. Every time she stepped inside my house, I had to fight the urge to scream. Once, when I excused myself to answer an email, I watched from the hallway as she glanced toward James's home office and checked her reflection in the microwave door. She smiled at herself, soft, private, the smile of someone thinking about a man she shouldn't be thinking about. She didn't know I was watching. That smile told me everything. The worst part? Emma was careful. She never touched James in front of me. She never moved too close, but she didn't have to. They had rehearsed this. They had a rhythm. And I was just now learning to hear it. After a while, the evidence wasn't the texts or the calls or the timing. It was the energy between them, the awareness, the tension, the way they avoided making eye contact unless they forgot I was in the room. Once, during a family dinner, Emma got up to check something in the guest bathroom. 10 minutes later, James stood and said he needed a minute to fix the patio door latch. They returned separately, but the flush in their cheeks matched. And when Emma sat down, she couldn't meet my eyes. Marcus, sweet, oblivious Marcus, complimented her cooking while she forced a smile. I watched her fingers tremble around her fork. By then, my instincts weren't whispers anymore. They were alarms. But the human mind does strange things. It protects you from truths you're not ready to face. Even with the phone call, even with the pieces falling into place, part of me kept thinking, maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe the call was a mistake. Maybe Emma was drunk or confused or lashing out. But then came the moment that erased the last of my denial. I was cleaning the living room when I found one of James's sweaters tucked between the couch cushions. Not unusual, he was sloppy with his clothes. But when I lifted it, a faint smell hit me. Vanilla and something floral, something sharp beneath it. A fragrance I didn't own, a fragrance Emma wore. I held the sweater to my face, breathing in the smell of betrayal woven into the cotton. And for the first time, anger didn't feel like fire. It felt like ice, cold, precise, controlled. That night, I lay beside James, watching his chest rise and fall. Every breath he took felt like a lie. I wasn't naive anymore. I wasn't confused. I wasn't even devastated. I was waiting, watching, gathering. Because when someone betrays you, you don't destroy them by screaming. You destroy them by letting them think they've gotten away with it until the moment you take everything back. Emma had given me the truth. James had given me motive. Now all I needed was the right moment. And it was coming, faster than either of them realized. The week before the Portland trip, the tension in our house thickened into something almost tangible, like humidity before a storm. James was restless, pacing more, double-checking things he normally wouldn't care about: his suitcase, his laptop charger, the presentation slides. Watching him prepare for a trip he believed would be his smooth escape made my skin prickle. He had no idea I knew. No idea that every lie he rehearsed in the mirror, every soft kiss he placed on my cheek, every "I love you" he murmured at night, went straight into a mental file I was building with surgical precision. Emma avoided me completely now. She stopped dropping by. She stopped texting. She didn't even send her usual TikToks or memes or stupid sister jokes. And that silence told me more than any confession could have. She was scared. Scared of me? Scared of losing James? Scared the whole thing would collapse? Maybe all three. Marcus, sweet, unaware Marcus, kept sending group messages for dinner plans, not realizing the two people he trusted most were rehearsing a life without their spouses. I didn't respond. I couldn't. The pressure inside me had shifted from hurt to calculation. My heartbreak had turned into strategy. The truth about betrayal is, once you see the whole picture, your mind goes into a different mode. You stop asking why and start asking what now. What's the leverage? What's the timing? What's the trap? And what will hurt the most? 3 days before Portland, I decided to test James, just a small pressure test, a bit of verbal probing to see how deeply his lies went. While we were eating dinner, I said casually, "Emma hasn't been around much lately. Everything okay with her?" James's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "Probably just busy," he said too quickly. Then he recovered, forcing a soft laugh. "You know how she gets when she's overwhelmed." I sipped my wine and held his eyes over the rim of the glass. "Funny," I said. "She used to come over constantly. People change," he replied. "Schedules change." He didn't ask why I was bringing her up. He didn't offer anything extra. He didn't risk over-explaining. That was how I knew he was lying. People telling the truth ramble. People lying stay short. That night, I pretended to fall asleep early. James stayed in the living room, pretending to watch a documentary. I watched through a crack in the bedroom door as he texted someone with rapid, anxious energy. My best guess? Emma. His fingers moved so fast, the light from the phone looked like a heartbeat pulsing in the darkness. When he finally came to bed, I kept my breathing steady, pretending to be deep asleep. He lay beside me in complete silence for nearly 10 minutes, as if weighing something. Then he whispered so faintly I almost couldn't catch it. "It'll be okay. After Portland. It'll all be okay." He wasn't talking to me. He was reassuring himself. I didn't sleep at all after that. I stared at the ceiling until sunrise, waiting, counting the hours until everything would shift in my favor. The day before the trip, James was in an oddly tender mood, hovering in the kitchen while I cooked, wrapping his arms around me from behind like old times, touching my hair, breathing me in. It felt staged, a performance. Maybe guilt tugged at him. Maybe Emma pressured him to speed things up. Maybe he sensed a shift in me that he couldn't name. Whatever the reason, his affection repulsed me, but I played along. I smiled. I kissed him back. I matched his energy perfectly. That's the thing about betrayal. Once you stop feeling it, you can imitate anything. That night, I waited until James fell asleep, then reached for his phone. He slept deeply, especially when he believed he was in control. I unlocked it using his thumb he never imagined I'd need to, and scrolled through his messages. Most had been deleted. Convenient, but not perfect. Cheaters never delete everything. They always miss one thread, one note, one small piece of connective tissue. And he had. A calendar reminder, Portland, 2 days, created on a night Emma had stopped by after an appointment. I checked the timestamp. They had been together that night. He had created the reminder in bed next to me after she left. I opened his email next. Nothing explicit, but the hotel reservation was for one person, not two, even though he had whispered otherwise to Emma, according to her during their 3 a.m. argument. That meant one thing. He intended to meet her there separately, slip her in quietly. New city, new bed, no witnesses. It was all falling into place. My breathing steadied, my resolve sharpened. The moment had come. The next morning, we went through our usual ritual. Coffee, kisses, his dramatic sigh about missing me, even though it's just one night. I fought an eye roll and instead said softly, "I wish you didn't have to go." He smiled, touched my cheek, lied through his teeth. "It'll be quick. I'll be back before you know it." He left at 8 a.m. By 8:07, I had packed my tote bag, grabbed my car keys, and left the house in the opposite direction of Portland. I wasn't going anywhere near that client meeting he bragged about, because I already knew something he didn't. The meeting had been canceled 2 days before. He hadn't told me, he hadn't planned to, but the client had emailed me directly, an old misunderstanding where they copied both of us on updates. The meeting was postponed. The trip? Unnecessary. James wasn't going for work. He was going for her. He was going to leave me quietly. Let the marriage rot without confrontation. Start a new life with my sister. The poetic cruelty of it made my hands tighten on the steering wheel. I drove 3 blocks away from our house, parked, and walked back. The neighborhood was quiet, the air cold, my footsteps silent on the pavement, my heartbeat the only loud thing in my chest. As I approached the house, I slowed, hiding behind the hedge just as a car turned the corner. A familiar Honda CR-V, Emma's. She wasn't even trying to be subtle anymore. She pulled into my driveway like she belonged there, like this was her home, like my husband was her husband. She got out, nervous, looking over her shoulder, clutching her phone. She had a key. Of course she had a key. I gave it to her years ago. I watched her unlock my front door and disappear inside. My breath crystallized in the air. My rage finally found a shape. This wasn't going to be a confrontation. This was going to be an education. They wanted to build a life together. Perfect. They could start by being locked in a room together, while the truth echoed around them with no exit. And I would stand on the outside, holding the key, deciding exactly how and when their world would fall apart. The setup had begun. I stayed hidden behind the hedge for a long moment, letting my breath settle, letting the reality of what I was seeing burn itself into memory. Emma, unlocking the house with the key I had given her, walking into my home with the ease of someone returning to her own lover. There was no hesitation in her steps, no guilt in her posture, only urgency, anticipation, the confidence of a woman who believed she was safe. My jaw clenched so hard my teeth ached. I moved quietly around the side of the house, keeping low, avoiding the windows. Years of gardening had taught me the layout of every blind spot. I knew exactly where I could stand and watch without being seen. The November air bit at my cheeks as I crouched behind the wooden fence that separated our yard from the neighbors. From that angle, I had a perfect view of the back door, the patio, and most importantly, the yard leading to the storage shed James had built last year. I used to love that shed. He'd said it was his project, a place to store tools, maybe a little workspace. I'd even helped paint it sage green. Now, just looking at it made bile rise in my throat. I didn't have to wait long. At 8:47 a.m., James's car pulled into the driveway. He got out quickly, glancing around not in suspicion, but in anticipation, like a man trying not to grin as he approaches something forbidden. He looked giddy, light, younger. My stomach twisted. He walked straight into the house without knocking, without pause, as if it belonged to them now. A few minutes passed. Then the back door opened. Emma stepped out first. She was dressed differently from how she'd arrived. Her jacket gone, her hair slightly tousled, her cheeks flushed. James followed behind her carrying something tucked under his arm. When he turned a little, I recognized the pattern immediately. The gray and white linen blanket from our bed. They brought my blanket. The one I slept under every night. The one that still held the scent of my shampoo. My fists curled so tightly my nails cut into my palms, grounding me, reminding me not to act impulsively. My rage was a living thing, feral and heaving, but beneath it was calculation, cold, sharp. I forced myself to breathe evenly as I watched them cross the yard. They were laughing like teenagers sneaking out past curfew, laughing like nothing mattered except the thrill of being together. Emma playfully shoved James with her shoulder, and he caught her wrist, pulling her back. She leaned into him easily, too easily, like she'd done it 100 times, and maybe she had. I watched them disappear into the shed, the door swinging shut behind them. That little structure, warm, insulated, private, hidden from neighbors, had become their nest. Their hideout, their sanctuary of betrayal. Suddenly, the last 8 months snapped into focus. Every time James had come home smelling faintly of sawdust, every afternoon Emma had conveniently stopped by. Every unexplained 30-minute gap in their stories. It all pointed here, my shed, my yard, my property, my life. They hadn't cheated on me in secret motels or dark parking lots. They'd chosen someplace comfortable, familiar, home. They'd taken the safest place in my world and made it dirty. I stayed frozen in place, listening. From where I stood, I couldn't hear words, but I didn't need to. The low hum of voices, the occasional soft moan, the rustle of movement, it was enough. Too much. My knees buckled, and I steadied myself against the fence, swallowing the rising scream clawing at my lungs. I didn't cry. I didn't collapse. Instead, something inside me crystallized. I felt myself harden into a version of Rebecca I didn't know existed. A version stripped of illusions. A version finally awake. After several minutes, the noises subsided. I imagined them lying tangled on the floor, wrapped in my blanket, whispering promises about the future they thought they were building. And then I imagined their faces when they realized the door wouldn't open, when they realized I knew, when the truth crashed down on them like ice water. I checked my phone. 9:15 a.m. They'd been inside long enough to incriminate themselves without any ambiguity. Perfect. I moved silently across the yard until I reached the back side of the shed, completely out of their view. Through the thin wall, I could hear muffled sounds, a laugh, a sigh, the shifting of bodies. My stomach flipped, but I stayed calm, cold, focused. There was a heavy metal latch on the outside of the shed door. James had installed it to keep raccoons out. A lie. The real purpose was convenience for them. They could lock themselves inside so no one would walk in unexpectedly. But what he never anticipated, what he never thought he'd need to worry about, was the latch being used against him. I placed my hand on the latch. It was warm from the sun. The weight of it felt biblical, consequential, irrevocable. I listened one last time, to be certain they were occupied. They were. God, they were. Then, slowly, steadily, I lifted the latch, slid the padlock through the slot. He kept it hanging on a nail right beside the door, as if fate wanted to help me, and clicked it shut. The sound of the lock snapping closed was soft, almost gentle. But to me, it rang like a gunshot, the kind that marked the beginning of a war. Immediately, I stepped back, heart pounding. I expected them to hear it, to burst out, but the shed stayed quiet. I didn't know if they'd noticed the sound or dismissed it as the wind. It didn't matter. They would find out soon enough. I waited by the fence, hidden by shadows, until I heard rustling inside. A pause, then James's voice, muffled. "Did you hear something?" Emma murmured something back, her tone breathy, unconcerned. The doorknob rattled lightly, then harder, then a confused, frustrated shove. "What the? It's stuck," James muttered. Emma's voice tightened. "What do you mean stuck?" "It won't open," he said, pulling harder now. Panic crept into his voice like cracks in glass. "Try again," Emma snapped. He did. The door thudded against the frame uselessly. I watched the panic build like a storm cloud. "Someone locked it," James said finally. "Someone locked it from the outside." The silence that followed was beautiful, heavy, perfect. A silence filled with realization, with fear, with the knowledge that their secret life had just ended. I closed my eyes, inhaled deeply, and let the cold satisfaction settle into my bones. I wasn't done, not even close. But for the first time in months, I felt in control. And this locking them in the place they had built their affair was only the beginning. The moment their voices turned from pleasure to panic, something inside me settled with an almost frightening calm. It wasn't triumph. It wasn't relief. It was clarity. The kind of clarity that comes only when the truth is undeniable and the path forward becomes razor sharp. The air around the shed vibrated with confusion. I heard James try the door again, harder this time, the wood groaning under the pressure. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered, breathless. "It won't budge." Emma's voice rose, tight with fear. "Why would it be locked from the outside? Who would do that?" I almost laughed at the question. Who? The wife whose bed blanket they were lying on. The sister Emma had betrayed. The woman they thought was far away in Portland. I backed away from the shed, far enough they wouldn't hear my footsteps, and circled toward the side of the house. I moved lightly, carefully, feeling like a shadow gliding around the edges of a story that no longer belonged to me. Or maybe it never had. Their voices faded as I walked, replaced by the soft hum of the November morning. The cold air stung my lungs, but it kept my head sharp. I reached the side panel of the house where the circuit breakers were mounted. The metal box James had labeled meticulously because he hated electrical surprises. He liked control. He liked order. He liked knowing exactly how everything in his world operated. The irony tasted sweet. I opened the panel and ran my finger down the labels. Living room, kitchen, home office, shed outlet and heater. I flicked the breaker off with a single click. The shed's heater, lights, and tiny portable fan went dead instantly. A moment later, I heard Emma's voice spike. "James, the lights just went out." "It's fine," he snapped, though his voice had a tremor. "Maybe the breaker tripped when the door jammed." "The heater's off," she said, panic sharpening her tone. "It's freezing in here." "Just relax," he muttered, trying to sound authoritative, trying to sound like a man not losing control. "Somebody will come by eventually. Rebecca will be home tonight." "James," Emma said, and the sound of my name in her frightened voice was almost delicious. What if Rebecca is the one who locked it? He didn't answer. I felt the moment he realized it. The ache of silence that followed was almost visible. Like a weight dropped onto both of them at once. He tried the door again, harder now, the shed shaking under the force of his panic. Then he shouted my name. "Rebecca, if you're out there, this isn't funny. Open the damn door." His voice cracked at the end. It was the crack that made something inside me cool even further. He had no idea what funny meant. Not yet. I walked back toward the patio, standing where I could hear them clearly, but they couldn't see me. Emma was crying now, soft, hiccuping sobs muffled through the wooden walls. "We have to get out," she whispered desperately. "Marcus thinks I'm at brunch with Sarah. He's going to call me. He's going to wonder why I'm not picking up." My heart paused mid-beat. Marcus, poor, loyal, oblivious Marcus. The man who brought Emma coffee in bed. The man who fixed things around their house. The man who had hugged James during barbecues without seeing the knife slipping between his ribs. He deserved the truth. He deserved to see it, not just hear it. And suddenly, the idea came to me with the precision of a blade sliding into place. I pulled out my phone and stared at Marcus's name. My thumb hovered. This wasn't petty revenge. This was justice, consequence, exposure. And if anyone deserved to watch the truth unfold with his own eyes, it was the man whose wife was currently crying in my shed, wearing God knows what under my blanket. My finger tapped call. The phone rang twice. "Rebecca," Marcus answered cheerfully. "Hey, everything okay?" His kindness hit me like a punch. "I'm having a small issue at the house," I said, keeping my voice steady. The door to the shed jammed. James went in to try fixing it, and now he's stuck inside. "I'm not home, and I was hoping you could swing by and help." "Oh, yeah, I can stop by," he said immediately. "Emma mentioned she might come help you organize today. Is she there too?" I swallowed. "Yes," I said softly. "She's here." "Perfect," he said. "I'll be there in 20 minutes." Perfect wasn't the word I would have used, but it fit. When I hung up, the shed went quiet for a moment, and then I heard James shouting again. "Rebecca, this is insane. You can't just leave us in here." Emma's breathing was fast, frantic. "James, what if she knows? What if this is because she doesn't know?" he snapped, but his voice lacked conviction. "She can't know." I took a step closer to the shed, so close I could touch the wall if I reached out. I didn't speak. They didn't deserve the comfort of my voice. I just let myself imagine their expressions, the dawning dread, the moment they realized the temperature was dropping and help was coming, but not the kind of help they expected. The kind that would rip the curtain away from everything they'd built. I walked to the back steps and sat down, folding my hands in my lap. I waited. The cold settled around me like a companion. Time passed. The shed rattled occasionally as James tried the door again, each attempt more desperate than the last. And then, finally, the sound of tires on the driveway. Marcus's truck. I didn't stand immediately. I let him walk around the house and find me sitting there, calm in a way that startled him. "Rebecca," he said cautiously, "where's the jammed shed?" I pointed toward the yard. "Back there," I said. "James is inside." Marcus frowned, confused. "Inside? Why would he?" Then he heard it, the sound of Emma's voice calling out from behind the shed wall. "James, hurry, try again." Marcus froze, his face drained of color. That's Emma." His eyes swung to mine, searching, pleading for a different truth, a softer one. I didn't offer it. "Go open the door," I said quietly. "You deserve to see it for yourself." My voice was steady, absolute. Marcus swallowed hard, his jaw trembling as he stepped toward the shed. unaware that he was walking straight into the moment his life would split in two. Inside, James had stopped yelling. Maybe he heard Marcus's footsteps. Maybe he knew. Maybe he finally understood what I had understood at 3 a.m. The truth always comes out, one way or another. And now, it was time. Marcus walked toward the shed, like a man approaching a car accident he knew he couldn't unsee. His boots crunched over the frosted November grass, each step slower than the last, as if his body understood before his mind did. The closer he got, the more obvious the voices inside became. Emma's shaky pleas, James's muffled curses, the frantic rattling of a locked door. I watched from the back steps, my hands folded in my lap, my heart steady in a way that frightened even me. I wasn't shaking anymore. I wasn't crying. I wasn't even angry. I was simply waiting for the truth to detonate. Marcus reached the door. He stared at the padlock hanging from the latch, the one I had clicked into place with a single, satisfying motion. For a moment he didn't move. His chest rose and fell too quickly, and I could almost see the exact second his brain began stitching together pieces he never wanted to understand. "James?" he called, voice trembling. There was a scramble inside, the sound of bodies shifting, fabric rustling, then James's voice low, strained, pretending nothing was wrong. "Marcus? Hey man, the door is stuck. Can you give it a shove?" He tried to sound casual, but the panic underneath twisted every syllable. Marcus's hand hovered over the lock. He swallowed, hard. "Why is Emma in there?" Silence. Thick, heavy, deadly. Then Emma's voice broke through, shaky and too loud. "Marcus, please just open the door. We can explain." Explain. A word that always means guilt. Marcus closed his eyes. I wondered if he was praying, or preparing, or trying one last time to imagine a world where his wife wasn't in a dark shed with my husband under a blanket from my bed. But reality was an unforgiving thing. His fingers fumbled with the key I had given him. I heard the tiny metallic scrape as he slid it into the lock. His breath stuttered. Then the padlock popped open with a dull, heavy click. A click that sounded like a life splitting apart. He didn't open the door right away. He just stood there, gripping the lock, shoulders drawn tight as a wire. "Marcus," Emma whispered from inside. "Please." He exhaled one long, broken sound and yanked the door open. Light flooded the shed, and everything spilled out with it. James stood there, shirtless, hair disheveled, a look of pure horror frozen on his face. Emma was behind him, scrambling to pull her sweater over her bare shoulders, mascara streaked in rivers down her cheeks. The blanket from my bed lay on the floor beneath them like a crime scene marker. Marcus didn't move. His expression didn't even change. It was as if his brain refused to accept what his eyes already knew. The world went silent for a heartbeat. Then Emma reached for him, panic raw in her movements. "Marcus, please listen." He recoiled before she could touch him. Not just stepped back, jerked away like she was poison. "Don't," he whispered, voice hollow. "Don't touch me." James stepped forward, palms raised as if trying to calm a dangerous animal. But he looked terrified. "Marcus, this isn't what it looks like." "Shut up." Marcus's voice was so low it shook the air. Then louder, harsher. "Shut up." James's mouth snapped shut. Emma sobbed. Marcus stared at them, his face stripped bare of everything love, trust, joy, until only devastation remained. "How long?" he asked. One question, one bullet. Neither of them answered. Not right away. James looked down. Emma wiped her face. And I swear I felt the world tilt when James finally forced out the truth. 8 months. Marcus flinched, like he'd been physically hit. 8 months. 8 months of lies. 8 months of shared dinners and holidays. 8 months of smiling photographs. 8 months of pretending. I watched his fingers curl slowly into fists. 8 months, he repeated, voice cracking. While Rebecca, while both of you were in our lives every single day? Emma sobbed harder. "Marcus, I'm sorry." "Sorry?" he whispered. "Sorry?" Then something inside him snapped, not violently, but completely. His face hardened. His eyes went dark. The grief didn't vanish, it calcified. He took a step back. "I'm done," he said. "I'm done with both of you." Emma tried to go after him, but I stood up from the steps and stepped into her path. She froze. Her eyes were wide, desperate, pleading. "Rebecca, please, you have to understand." "Understand?" I said softly. "You want me to understand how my husband and my sister have been fint, in a shed behind my house? Using my blanket, In my home? While smiling in my face? She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I leaned in, my voice low enough only she could hear. I understand perfectly. Then Marcus brushed past me. He didn't look back at Emma, not even once. His truck engine roared as he pulled out of the driveway with a speed that nearly tore gravel from the ground. The moment he disappeared down the street, the yard fell eerily still. James stepped out of the shed, cold air hitting his bare skin. He looked pathetic, angry, embarrassed, afraid. "Rebecca," he started, "we need to talk." "No," I cut in. "You need to leave." He blinked. "This is my home too." "Not anymore." My voice was a blade. "You have 30 minutes to get your things and get out. If you're still here after that, I call the police and let them know you were trespassing on my property after being caught committing adultery with my sister." His face paled. Emma looked between us, shaking, mascara still staining her cheeks. She whispered, "Becca, please don't do this, please." I turned to her, my expression ice. "Get off my property," she whimpered, backing away, clutching her sweater around her like she was suddenly cold. James stood there, jaw clenched, chest rising and falling too quickly. But he didn't argue. He knew better. I stepped aside, giving them both a clear path to the driveway. They walked past me, shoulders hunched, broken in ways they had earned. And for the first time since 3 a.m., when that phone call shattered my life, I felt something that almost resembled peace. Not because the pain was gone, but because justice finally had started. Part 8. When Marcus's truck vanished at the end of the street, silence flooded the yard like a tide rising around my ankles. James stood a few feet away, shirt half open, hair disheveled, skin flushed with humiliation. Emma hovered behind him, arms wrapped around herself, shivering as if the cold had only just reached her. I could feel their eyes on me, waiting for some explosion, for screaming or sobbing, or the dramatic collapse they could point to later and say, "She lost control." But I wasn't falling apart. I was frighteningly, unnervingly composed. "Rebecca," James tried again, stepping forward cautiously, the way someone approaches a dangerous dog. "We need to discuss this. Privately." I almost laughed. "You don't get privacy with me anymore. You forfeited that the moment you walked into that shed." His jaw locked, Emma's breath hitched behind him. He glanced back at her before turning to me, lowering his voice as if trying to regain authority. "We can fix this. I made a mistake." "A mistake?" The words slid out of me like ice. "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is leaving the stove on. Sleeping with my sister for 8 months is not a mistake, James. It's a lifestyle." Emma whimpered. James stiffened. For a moment, he looked like he wanted to argue, to push back, to twist the narrative into something that made him less monstrous. But his shoulders slumped. He knew he had no ground to stand on. "Just let me inside," he finally said. "Let me get my things." "You have 30 minutes, I repeated. "After that, if you're on this property, I call the police." I walked past him toward the house, not giving him the satisfaction of waiting for a response. I didn't look at Emma either. She wasn't worth the eye contact. Inside the house, the warmth felt suffocating. My home, the place where I had laughed, cooked, slept, dreamed, felt contaminated. Every object seemed tainted by their hands. The couch where Emma sat during movie nights, the kitchen counter where James kissed my neck while I cooked, the hallway where they must have brushed past each other, sharing silent promises I was too naive to see. I stood in the kitchen, gripping the counter, until my knuckles whitened. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. The betrayal felt like a bruise expanding across my entire body, deepening with every breath. Through the window, I saw James and Emma standing awkwardly in the yard. He was talking quickly, low, angry. She kept wiping her face, nodding like a scolded child. "Good. Let them feel small. Let them feel exactly what they earned." I turned away. I refused to waste another second watching them. Instead, I walked into the bedroom and looked around, taking inventory of everything in my home that belonged to me. Everything I had built, everything James had quietly eroded with his lies. On the dresser sat a framed photo from our wedding. James smiling, Emma beside me as maid of honor, all three of us frozen in pretend happiness. Rage simmered through me, but it didn't erupt. It distilled. I picked up the frame and gently set it face down. Then I collected every photo in the room that contained either of them. Wedding pictures, family gatherings, holidays. The smiling evidence of years I had been blind. I stacked them neatly. No tearing, No smashing, just organization, precision, control. 30 minutes passed faster than I expected. When I stepped back outside, James was near his car stuffing clothes into a duffel bag. Emma was pacing near the sidewalk, hugging herself. They both looked up when I approached, hope flickering in James's eyes, desperation in Emma's. "Please," Emma whispered, stepping closer. "Please talk to me. I'm your sister." "Not anymore," I said calmly. The words hit her like a slap. She staggered back. "Becca, I didn't mean for this to happen." But it did happen. My voice stayed even. Again, and again, and again. Every time you snuck around behind my back, it was a choice. 8 months of choices. Don't pretend you tripped and fell into this. Her lip trembled. "I miss you. You miss what I used to think you were," I corrected. "Not who you are," she cried harder. James zipped his bag angrily. "This is ridiculous," he snapped. "Throwing away a marriage over one mistake. 8 months of mistakes," I reminded him. "And you didn't throw away the marriage, you burned it down. We were having problems," he shouted. "You were distant. You were focused on work. You made me feel invisible." "So, you made yourself visible to my sister?" He flinched. Emma stepped between us, hands raised. "We know we hurt you, okay? But you keeping us locked in a shed was a courtesy," I cut in sharply. "It gave Marcus the truth, it gave me clarity. And it gave both of you the chance to face what you've done." James stared at me, fury and shame mixing into something ugly. "I hope you're happy," he spat. "This is cruelty." "No," I said softly. "Cruelty is betrayal. This is consequence." For the first time, neither of them had anything to say. James slammed his car door. Emma sobbed into her hands. I watched them without emotion. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't broken. I was simply done. James's engine revved. He didn't look back as he drove away. Emma didn't move, still crying by the sidewalk. "Leave," I told her. "Now." She lifted her face, streaked with mascara, red with grief. "Where am I supposed to go?" "Anywhere that isn't here." She nodded slowly, finally understanding there was no forgiveness coming today. No warmth, no sisterly softness. She walked to her car like a ghost and drove away without another word. When the last sound of her tires faded, the silence felt different, not empty, not painful, clean. My yard, my house, my life finally free of them. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in months, and then, as the quiet settled fully around me, a new thought crept in. The betrayal was over, but the war, the legal, emotional, personal war that would follow, had only just begun. Part 9? When Emma's car finally disappeared at the end of the street, I stood alone in the yard, staring at the shed that had become a monument to betrayal. The cold air stung my cheeks, but my mind felt strangely quiet, almost detached, like I had stepped outside of myself and was watching my life from a distance. It was over. Not the pain, not the unraveling of everything I thought I knew, but the part where I played the fool, that Rebecca was gone. I turned back toward the house, stepping inside and closing the door behind me with a soft click. The silence was enormous, heavy. My home had never felt this still. I walked slowly through the living room, past the couch where James used to fall asleep during movie nights, past the wall where Emma and I once took a smiling selfie after baking cookies together. Every memory in this house had a shadow now, a dark echo of something that used to feel warm. But I refused to let the shadows win. Not today. I picked up my phone with hands that no longer trembled. If my marriage was going to die, it would die on my terms. I opened a new note and began typing. A timeline, every detail, every red flag, every suspicious moment that I had once dismissed. Dates, times, evidence. The earring, the locked shed, the phone call at 3 a.m., the sudden visits, the lies. It felt clinical, almost surgical, as if I were dissecting my own heartbreak under a microscope. When I finished, I saved the file and emailed it to myself. Then I opened my browser and searched for divorce attorneys in Seattle. Not just any attorneys, the ones who scared people, the ones who didn't negotiate, they dismantled. I filled out 3 contact forms, wrote the same simple message each time. Urgent consultation needed. Adultery, marriage of 7 years, immediate separation. My phone chimed within 10 minutes. The fastest, most expensive firm in the city had an opening that afternoon. Perfect. I glanced toward the bedroom. James had left clothes scattered across the floor in his hurry to pack. His scent still lingered in the air, aftershave mixed with a faint warmth that made my stomach twist. I opened the windows, let the cold wind erase him. I stripped the sheets from the bed and stuffed them into a trash bag. The blanket, the one they had used in the shed, I carried with 2 fingers like it was contaminated and threw it straight into the outside garbage bin. I would burn the whole house before I slept under that thing again. By the time I finished cleaning, my chest hurt with exhaustion, but I didn't stop. I moved through the house methodically, gathering everything Emma had ever given me: jewelry, candles, framed photos, a scarf, birthday cards, books she said reminded her of me, souvenirs from trips she took with Marcus. I packed them into boxes, not gently, but not violently either, just decisively. When I reached the last item, a silver bracelet she gave me on her wedding day, a wave of nausea hit. Her voice echoed in my memory. Sisters are forever. I placed the bracelet in the box and closed the lid. No, they weren't. Not anymore. I carried the boxes to the front door, stacked them neatly, and wrote one note on top: delivered back to sender. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. For a moment I froze. Then I opened it. It was Marcus. I don't know what to say. Thank you for showing me. I'm here if you need anything. Short, shaken, honest. I typed back, I'm here too. We didn't need long apologies or dramatic declarations. We both lost something. We both saw something we shouldn't have. We were bound now, not by betrayal, but by the truth. I made coffee, though I didn't taste it, didn't even drink most of it. I was running on something stronger than caffeine: purpose, survival. By noon, the house felt empty in a way I couldn't describe. James's car wasn't in the driveway, his shoes weren't by the door, his jacket wasn't on the hook. His presence had evaporated, but the betrayal hadn't. Not yet, not even close. When the attorney called, her voice was sharp and crisp, the kind of tone that sliced through excuses. Rebecca, I read your intake details. I'm going to need everything you have: photos, messages, statements, timestamps. Your case is strong already. Strong. The words soothed me like a hand on my back. For the first time since dawn, I felt the ground under my feet again. We'll move quickly, she continued. You'll need to change your locks today. And don't communicate with your husband. Let us handle everything, I said. I already changed the locks. She paused, impressed. Good. That shows decisiveness. Courts notice that. After the call, I went to the hardware store and bought new deadbolts. The man behind the counter didn't know he was handing me the final severing of my marriage. He just smiled politely as he rang me up. Back home, I installed the locks myself. It felt symbolic, closing the door on the man who shattered me, sealing the entry he'd abused, rebuilding the barrier he broke. When the last screw tightened into place, I exhaled deeply. For the first time, the house felt like mine again, not ours. Mine. That afternoon, my parents called. My mother's voice cracked the moment she heard me. Rebecca, sweetheart, Emma called us. We didn't believe her. Please tell me she's lying. She's not, I said. She's been sleeping with James for 8 months. Silence. Then a sound I'd never heard from my father before, a sharp, furious inhale. That girl is no daughter of mine, he said coldly. My mother sobbed. Oh God, Rebecca, I'm so sorry. I didn't cry. I didn't crumble. I simply said, it's done. After I hung up, I sat on the couch, my couch, and let the quiet wash over me. My life had split open that morning. But in the ruins, something new was forming. Not hope, not yet, but strength. A strange, unfamiliar strength growing in the cracks of everything broken. And I knew with absolute certainty, this wasn't the ending, not even close. This was the part where the rebuilding began. And the reckoning. Part 10? By the next morning, the shock had settled into something sharper: clarity mixed with exhaustion, like waking up after a storm, only to find the world eerily quiet. I made coffee without thinking, muscle memory guiding my hands. But when I reached for a second mug, the one James always used, I stopped. My fingers hovered in midair. Then I opened the cabinet, took the mug down, and dropped it straight into the trash. The sound it made, ceramic cracking, felt like punctuation at the end of a sentence I should have written years ago. My phone buzzed with the first message of the day. James. Of course. We need to talk. I stared at the screen, waiting for the familiar ache to hit. But nothing came. No longing, no confusion. just a cold, factual understanding. The man texting me wasn't my husband anymore. He was just someone who happened to share a lease and a last name temporarily. Another message followed, longer, angrier. You blindsided me yesterday. You embarrassed me in front of Marcus. You made a scene. We could have handled this privately. You've humiliated both me and Emma for no reason. For a moment I just blinked, shocked at how quickly he twisted the narrative. Betrayal wasn't the crime exposure was. That was who he had always been. That was the part I never wanted to see. I blocked his number. My attorney had been clear. Do not engage. Not once. She emailed me shortly after. Preliminary filings drafted, consultation scheduled with a financial analyst, instructions on how to gather documents, bank records, tax returns, shared accounts, all of it. It was overwhelming, but the overwhelm felt productive, like cleaning out a house that had gone moldy without you noticing. While I sorted paperwork, a notification popped on my laptop, an email from Emma. Subject line, please. I hovered over the trash icon, but something made me open it. Maybe morbid curiosity, maybe closure, maybe cruelty. Becca, I know you hate me, and you have every right. But please believe me when I say I didn't plan for any of this. I didn't mean for it to happen. James and I just connected. We were going through things. You seem so distant lately. It just happened. That phrase again. It just happened. As if her clothes simply fell off. As if months of secrecy were accidental. As if sneaking into my shed at 9:15 a.m. on a Thursday was a clumsy coincidence. Then the line that twisted my stomach. I miss you. I can't lose you forever. I closed the email. I didn't reply. Another message came seconds later, like she'd been waiting for the read receipt. Please don't tell Mom and Dad. They'll never forgive me. I deleted both messages. They were already forgiven by no one. Around noon, there was a knock on my door. Not frantic like James's pounding, not hesitant like Emma's would have been. Measured. I opened it to find Marcus standing there, eyes hollowed, hands shoved in his jacket pockets. He looked older than he did yesterday, years older. We stared at each other for a long moment before he exhaled softly. I'm sorry for showing up unannounced. I just didn't want to be alone. I stepped aside. Come in. He sat on the couch, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor like it might explain everything. I went home after I left yesterday, he said. Her things were everywhere. Our wedding photo on the mantel, her shoes by the door. I didn't touch anything. I just sat on the kitchen floor for a while. I didn't speak. There was nothing to say that wouldn't cheapen it. Do you think they ever loved us? He finally asked, voice so fragile it barely existed. I took a long breath, feeling the weight of the question settle between us. I think, I said slowly. They loved what we gave them. Stability, admiration, a place to hide their selfishness. Marcus nodded, throat tight. That sounds right. He was quiet for several seconds before he added, I filed for divorce this morning. I nodded. I'm starting the process too. We shared a moment of terrible solidarity, the kind that bonds people in ways happy memories never could. After he left, James's desperation escalated. New number, new email. He'd always been persistent, annoyingly persistent when he wanted something. Rebecca, I deserve a conversation. You're destroying our marriage over a misunderstanding. You've always been dramatic. We can get through this if you stop overreacting. Overreacting? The word made my blood simmer. I forwarded every message to my attorney. She responded within minutes. Perfect, this helps. It didn't feel perfect, it felt infuriating. But if his stupidity strengthened my case, I wouldn't complain. By late afternoon, I drove to my parents' house. My mother opened the door with swollen eyes and pulled me into her arms before I could speak. Sweetheart, she whispered, voice breaking. How could she do this to you? I didn't cry. I didn't collapse. I stood there stiffly, because the truth hadn't settled yet, not fully. My father sat in the living room, elbows on his knees, staring at the wall with a fury I'd never witnessed from him. Emma called, he said without looking at me. I told her not to come home, my mother added quietly. She begged, she sobbed. But some things cannot be undone. I sat with them, letting the weight of their heartbreak mingle with mine. It was strange Emma hadn't just betrayed me. She had detonated the foundation of our family. One choice had rippled through all of us like shrapnel. That night when I returned home, I stood in the doorway, looking into the dark, quiet space that used to be filled with shared routines, shared laughter, shared dreams. Now it held only me, and that was enough. Maybe for the first time ever, it was enough. I locked the door behind me. A brand new lock, a brand new life waiting on the other side of the paperwork. And as I walked through the dim hallway, the thought finally formed without hesitation or doubt. I will not rebuild anything with people who tried to destroy me. Part 11? The days that followed felt unreal, like I was moving through a world made of glass, fragile, reflective, but no longer sharp enough to cut me the way it once had. Every morning I woke up in a house that felt both unfamiliar and unmistakably mine. The absence of James's footsteps, his cologne, his careless humming things I once took for granted, no longer felt empty. They felt like space returning to me. Space I didn't realize he had taken. My attorney moved quickly, efficiently, ruthlessly. Divorce paperwork was drafted before the week ended. Terms laid out with clinical precision. Asset division, the house, his share of the savings, documentation of infidelity. She explained the cold strategy behind every detail, her voice steady and confident. Judges appreciate clarity, she said. And your case has clarity. Clarity. Yes, that word again, the one I kept circling back to. Betrayal had blurred everything at first, but now the edges were sharp again. I knew who I was. I knew what they were. And I knew exactly what I would not tolerate. While she spoke, my phone buzzed another email from James. She glanced at it and raised an eyebrow. He's persistent. He's desperate, I corrected. We added the message to the growing pile of documentation. That evening, I received a text from Marcus. Filed. It's official. I replied simply, good. Then, are you okay? Marcus didn't answer immediately. When he did, it was only 2 words. Not yet. Not yet. I understood. Because healing isn't instant. It arrives slowly, like fog lifting from a coastline. Meanwhile, the destruction moves fast. By the end of the second week, Emma's life had unraveled more dramatically than I expected. My parents refused to speak to her. My father blocked her number entirely. My mother, the more gentle of the two, sobbed for days and then made a decision she never thought she'd make. I can't see her right now. I can't look at her without thinking of what she did to you. Relatives reached out, some shocked, others disgusted. Family group chats went silent whenever Emma attempted to explain herself. People could forgive many things, but sleeping with your sister's husband wasn't one of them. She texted me again. Longer messages, rambling. Apologies tangled with excuses. I was lonely. James understood me in ways Marcus didn't. It just happened. I didn't want to hurt you. All lies. Every word reeked of self-preservation. But the last message stopped me cold. I'm pregnant. For a moment I stood frozen, my phone clenched in my hand. Pregnant, my pulse hammered so hard I felt it in my throat. I reread the message twice, then again. Pregnant. With his child. My husband's child, my sister's child. A child conceived behind my back while I sat crying in her arms about my own infertility. A child created in betrayal. I didn't know what emotion hit me first. Rage, heartbreak, nausea, disbelief. But whatever it was, it surged through me with a force that nearly buckled my knees. I forwarded the message to my attorney. Her response was immediate. Do not engage. This is likely manipulation. Was it? I didn't know. I didn't want to know. But one thing was clear. Emma wasn't reaching out to repair anything. She was trying to bind me to her suffering, to make me part of her chaos. I refused. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. The sky was still dark, that muted blue before sunrise. I brewed coffee and stood by the window, watching the world lighten bit by bit. And for the first time since everything shattered, I felt something warm stirring inside me. Not happiness, not peace, something steadier, something sturdier, strength. I showered, dressed, and headed to the consulting agency where I'd built my career from the ground up. My team welcomed me with the same warmth they always did, unaware of the implosion happening behind the scenes. But something was different. I noticed myself standing straighter, speaking more decisively, present in a way I hadn't been for months. Pain has a way of sharpening people, not breaking them. On my lunch break, I met with my attorney in person. She slid documents across the table, detailed, clean, airtight. We'll file next week, she said. He won't get the house. You paid the down payment. You maintain all business assets. His attorney will likely push for negotiation, But we won't budge. I nodded, calm and firm. Good. She studied me for a moment. You're handling this better than most. I offered a small, tired smile. I'm done letting them take anything else from me. That evening, as I drove home, my phone buzzed again. Marcus, Emma told me she might be pregnant. My chest tightened. Do you believe her? His reply came fast. No, she's trying to pull both of us back in. She thinks guilt still works. My shoulders loosened. I won't let her. Neither will I, he said. Then, after a pause, thank you again for telling me. It hurt, but it saved me. When I arrived home, I found myself standing in the doorway again, staring into the quiet house. Except this time, I didn't feel alone. I felt unburdened, stronger, present. I went upstairs and opened my closet, pulling out the last remaining items James left behind: 2 shirts he forgot, a watch, a stack of old receipts. I put them in a bag and left it on the porch with a note. Pick up before Friday. After that, it goes in the trash. No anger, no emotion, just boundaries. For the first time in months, I slept without waking once. And the next morning, when sunlight streamed through the bedroom window, it illuminated a truth I was finally ready to accept. I didn't lose anything worth keeping. James wasn't my future. Emma wasn't my sister. The life I thought I had wasn't real. But the one I was building now, this new version, forged from betrayal and clarity, was mine, entirely mine. And I wasn't afraid of what came next. The final signing took place on a quiet Thursday morning. The kind of morning where the world feels suspended, like it's waiting for you to decide who you're going to be next. I drove downtown with the windows cracked just enough to feel the cold air against my skin. It grounded me, reminded me that I was awake, really awake for the first time in years. The law office was sterile and bright, a place designed for endings. Papers were stacked neatly on the polished table, each one a goodbye, disguised as legal language. My attorney handed me a pen, and I didn't hesitate. Not once. My signature flowed across the page as if it had been waiting there all along. With every stroke, a weight lifted. A weight I didn't even realize I'd been carrying since the day I said, I do. James had already signed his portion earlier that morning. I imagined him sitting stiffly in that same chair, jaw clenched, pride cracked, scribbling his name on the documents that would make our separation irreversible. It should have hurt, but it didn't. It felt like closing a book I had outgrown long before I was willing to admit it. When everything was finalized, my attorney smiled. It's done, Rebecca. You're free. Free. The word echoed through me like a soft thunder. I stepped outside into the cool air and stood there for a moment, letting the reality sink in. 7 years of marriage, 8 months of betrayal, and 1 morning in a shed that changed everything over, finished. Mine to walk away from. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. But I didn't need to open it to know who it was. Only one person would reach out today, grasping for the last loose thread of something already cut clean. I didn't open the message. I didn't need to. I blocked the number, erased it, and slid my phone into my pocket. Whatever James wanted: closure, forgiveness, a final chance to twist the narrative, it no longer mattered. He no longer mattered. On the drive home, sunlight broke through the clouds in thin, golden streaks, hitting the windshield like quiet promises. I turned onto my street and felt something shift inside me when I saw my house glowing softly in the morning light. No shadows, no secrets, no ghosts of the people who ruined themselves trying to ruin me. When I stepped inside, the air felt warm in a way it hadn't for months. I brewed coffee, poured it into my favorite mug, and stood at the kitchen counter, the same place where so many lies had once sat between us. But today, there was no bitterness, only stillness, only me. Later that afternoon, a small package arrived at my door with no return label. I recognized the handwriting instantly, Emma's. For a moment, I just stared at the box, feeling nothing, no anger, no curiosity, just a distant sense of closure hovering just out of reach. I brought it inside, set it on the table, and opened it carefully. Inside were the things I had left on her doorstep weeks ago. Photos, small gifts, the silver bracelet from her wedding day. Except now, they weren't packed neatly. They were scattered inside the box haphazardly, as if she couldn't bear to touch them any longer. On top was a single note. I'm leaving Washington. I just wanted you to know, I'm sorry. For everything. No begging, no excuses, no manipulations, just a single sentence to mark her exit. I folded the note once and slid it into a drawer, not to keep, but simply because tearing it up felt like giving it too much importance. Her leaving wasn't an apology, it was an ending. And endings don't need ceremonies, they just need acceptance. As evening settled over the neighborhood, I took a walk around the block, breathing in the crisp air. The world felt different, not lighter, exactly, but wider, like I finally had room to expand into the person I had been shrinking away from becoming. When I turned the corner, I saw Marcus sitting on the edge of his truck bed, shoulders relaxed for the first time since everything happened. He looked up and gave me a small nod, a quiet acknowledgement between two people who had survived the same fire. "You all right?" he asked. I thought about it, really thought. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the months of suspicion that had gnawed at me in the dark. The shed, the click of the padlock, the way everything had detonated in one morning that still didn't feel real. And then I realized something. I was all right. Not healed, not untouched, but alive, clear, stronger? "Yeah," I said softly. "I think I am." Marcus exhaled and smiled, a real one this time. "Good, you deserve that." We didn't talk long, we didn't need to. Two survivors don't need explanations, they recognize the scars in each other without asking. Back home, I lit a candle in the living room and sank onto the couch. It was quiet, but it wasn't empty. It was peaceful. I looked around my home, the clean surfaces, the rearranged shelves, the spaces reclaimed, and I felt something bloom inside me. Gratitude, not for the pain, but for the transformation it forced. Because betrayal didn't break me, it revealed me. It carved out the parts of me that tolerated less than I deserved. It stripped away the illusions, so I could finally stand in the truth of who I was becoming. A woman with boundaries sharper than any lie told to her. A woman who trusted her intuition now more than ever. A woman who survived the worst people she ever loved and came out whole. As the candle flickered, I whispered into the quiet house, not for anyone else to hear, but for myself. I'm free, and I'm never going back. The wind outside shifted softly, like the world agreed, and for the first time since that phone rang at 3 a.m., I let myself breathe all the way in.